This thing that we get so used to, this vessel, isn't just your body, but it is a receiver, like an antenna on a radio. And so if we're all slunched over, not feeling so great, kind of sluggish today, we might not receive as much of the message as if we're present, heart forward, head up. So everybody, if you'd like to, I invite you to create a little bit of space between your back and the back of this seat. So just scooting a little bit forward, if it's comfortable enough on your chair, just so you're not lounging back on it. And inhale, lift up with your chest, with your heart center. Think about your heart center reeling up towards the ceiling. Inhaling in through the nose, nice full breath. And as you exhale, bring the shoulders back, pinch the shoulder blades gently together, and exhale, relax the arms down with a sigh out the mouth. And then inhaling again through the nose, pick up the crown and fully elongate that spine. So sit up as high as you can. And then shift the head gently back over the shoulders. Exhale and relax the head, relax the shoulders. So keeping everything nice and stacked, but still relaxed. One more big breath in the nose. Really expand those lungs to their full capacity. And exhale out the mouth, relax. And let's come to. Slowly opening the eyes. But I invite you, as I do in my yoga classes, to maintain an internal awareness throughout my talk. If you're looking at my body and my words for face value of what's just happening outside of the body, I don't know that you'll get the full experience. But if you're looking inside at the same time and understand, how am I interpreting this? How does this make me feel or think? Not saying that there's any wrong answer with whatever comes up to you, but still just consider it. So, very important topic, something that I have learned indirectly, did not really mean to find this out, as I grew up with science, not really spirituality, but came into the realization that we were all divine or all potentially divine. We're all Christ or potentially Christ. When I was in South Africa in 2010 on top of a mountain, and when I had this divine revelation, I'm not kidding you, as cliche as it might sound, the wind and the rain that was pouring down on top of me all stopped immediately. And the clouds opened up and a beam of light came down on top of me, and I felt the universe for its entirety, and all of its cycles and all of its perfection and all its ridiculous bliss. And I fell onto my knees and wept out of sheer joy. And so from there forth, I was set on my spiritual path. And something that I've noticed lately, and something that has really just grinded my gears throughout my whole life, is Christians. Sorry. But Christians gave me a real hard time of it growing up. And I wonder why, because ultimately I don't want to have enemies. I don't really want to have prejudices. But I did, and I still kind of do. And I'm learning about why that is. So we take the word very literally. What is the difference between Christian and Christ? Does anyone see very plainly? I-A-N. Yeah. It's a perfect point, actually, because actually, the only real difference between Christ and Christian is I-A-N. Does anyone know what the word Christ means? By show of hands? The word Christ. Surprising. The word Christ means light. I-A-N is a suffix on the end of Christ, or of light, that means part of. I mean, you can define it in a few different ways, but essentially what it really means is part of. A Christian might be one who considers themselves a follower or a part of Christ or of God, whereas a Christ is understanding that that individual, as well as all individuals and all things, is light, which now we actually understand scientifically as true. Light, energy. One way or another, I guess what we're learning as human beings is how is it all light, and how does light decide to slow itself down, bend itself in so many infinite, amazing, impossible ways in order to create us in this reality? So starting off with something a little innocent enough, I was looking for a hymn on parts and wholes, as I understand that Christian would maybe considers them a part of light, whereas a Christ considers themselves a whole of light. And so when I looked at hymn, part, and whole, this was the first thing that came. Oh. Do we have sound? We do not.
In one whole pie, the denominator of the whole pie was 5. The numerator of my part was 3, and 3/5 of the pie was for me. Mama made the apple pie out of Granny Smith's. She asked me if I liked it. I said, actually the 5th. The numerator's the part, the denominator's the whole, and fractions are the heart of a whole. 3 birds were on a telephone pole. The denominator 3 was the group as a whole. The numerator 2 out of the thirds described the 2/3 that were bluebirds. The numerator 2 described how many were blue, and something fell on my head. It was bird poo. The numerator's the part, the denominator's the whole, and fractions are the heart of a whole.
Kind of catchy. Actions speak louder than turds.
I took 4 shots on the goal. 3 went in, but 1 hit the pole. The denominator was all 4 shots. The numerator was the 3 goals I got. The other team's record had taken a toll. I got 3/4 of my shots and 1 Olympic gold. The numerator's the part, the denominator's the whole, and fractions are the heart of a whole.
Not a bad animation. We can turn that sound down so we don't have that feedback. Thank you. So, interesting. Relevant? Well, I suppose the reason why I am here today and why my spiritual practice is as it is to relate simple mathematics, simple relativity to everything, and seeing about if I can, how I can, when I can, enable singular consciousness, your consciousness, into waking up and recognizing your wholeness, your holiness. This is me, fire spitter, and here we have a shape of a clear hole, this light shape. Now, is this a hole? One whole motorcycle.
Right.
Is this a hole?
Yes.
One whole person. So we have 3 holes here, all giving off light through some form of burning. This one has a burning engine and a burning light bulb. This one obviously has burning fire. This one has a burning bioelectricity from the heart center. But also, all 3 of these at the same time are parts of this picture. And this is one whole picture. But also, what's out here? Everything else. So even though this is the whole picture, this is the whole person, this is the whole fire spinning act, this is the whole motorcycle, still there are other holes out here. This is made up of many, many parts. This is made up of a few parts. This prop is more simple. A few wicks, some white gas. This is made up of many parts. Starting to understand where I'm getting at here? So, I like to recognize that Christianity has many parts, both in its practices and in all of its different denominations. There's lots of different types of Christianity, right? So, relatively speaking, everything is whole and everything has parts. The difference is, can we see that, and better yet, can we celebrate that? Can we see how great it is to have these contrasting things and this diversity, where still everything seems to be put together just as it needs to be? Because none of this is actually, so you might be seeing here that, oh, there's a lot of darkness in this picture too. There's a lot of things that I can't see, like what's behind the motorcycle, what's back there. Now, if you're fooled by these things are a virtue and a vice, these eyes. Because what our eyes do is essentially pick up just some light. Not very much of it. In fact, if you've ever seen the electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light is a small fraction, a small part. So everything in which you experience in the visual universe, all of this infinity that we experience, infinity itself, is still part of a whole. But it's still a whole because we have one whole universe. But it keeps changing. We keep on finding out that there's more, that there are more details. We start to understand the intricacies of the working universe, the same way in which one might take this motorcycle apart and find the intricacies of how it works, or take this body apart and figure out how it works. Relativity. So, Christ derives from the word Chrisla, which derives from the 7 core audible sound tones of creation. Now, these you might hear if you ever have some meditation tracks of some monks or something, worshiping, chanting, doing something over and over and over again, and essentially getting into a trance state. If you break apart that word Christala, it breaks apart into what created Christ and Allah. Now, Allah, that might be a word that Christians do not like very much. Why? Well, it relates to Islam, and it seems, as far as I can tell, that Christianity and Islam are maybe the biggest rivalries of the world as far as religions go, even though this is showing that they were two halves of a whole, two parts that broke apart at some point. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't research it in that much depth. But nonetheless, if we were to actually go over and see Islam for what it was and submerge ourselves in the culture for a certain amount of time, we start to recognize the same thing. We start to, I'm sure, realize similarities between Christian practices and Islamic practices. Still a lot of differences too, but also relatively the same. And I'm sure Islam breaks apart in a lot of different types of Islam, just like Christianity. The difference is, for us at Unity, is can we have the respect enough for all religions to see them all as relatively one and the same? And that what makes them one and the same is our individual perspective, the way in which we choose to interpret things. Sometimes it doesn't always seem like a choice, because maybe your parents or society or your preacher talked to you enough times, or got you to feel maybe insecure about yourself or fearful about not following along with the herd, about not being a part of the group, not being a part of the whole, which makes sense to me. In essence, we can't actually congregate together unless we parts come in as a whole group. But as I understand from my spiritual practices, my spiritual awakening, and my messages from God is that it is my purpose, this ego's purpose, to begin that transition, begin to unify the world, not through the church pressing its beliefs onto people, not through the government needing to control, not through the corporations needing for you to consume, just us as individuals. This regular old thing that you've gotten so used to, but don't actually recognize that it's just a small part of who you are. The body, the ego, this persona, Jesse, is just a part of who I am. Without the light that passes through it, I'm just a corpse. Without all the people who took care of me, who taught me, who challenged me, who helped me with my guidance, I don't exist. Without the floor beneath me, without the earth beneath me, I can't exist. Without the sky above me and all the things in the universe, all these parts, every little detail, those that did interact with me directly and clearly and those that maybe were indirectly, everything went into making who I am. But ultimately, it was my choice and my choice alone of how to define it and how to continue to define it. Because we're constantly changing, right? Every single moment, you're a tiny bit different than you were the moment before. Even if it's just a couple little neurons firing or a couple little cells shifting their position, we're constantly changing. Now, the reason why I practice yoga, well, first of all, let me back up a tiny bit. I find that a lot of people want to have control, want to really just kind of make their lives into what it is they want. But the more you look at it, the more you recognize, oh my God, there are way too many things in this world to actually have control over it. Way too many people, way too many details. Maybe in this dimension, maybe there's other things happening in other dimensions. I can't control it. When we drive a car, we think maybe I'm controlling the car, but really what you're actually doing is influencing it up to the point where it actually seems like you might have control, but you have no control over the engine, you have no control over the other cars, you have no control over the road, and you don't necessarily have whole control over your focus and your consciousness even in the car. You might space out a little bit or something distract you. So there is no control. We might grow in influence, though, by studying things like yoga. Yoga, to me, is the study of the mind, body, and breath. Doing it over and over and over again, you start to get into deeper depths of understanding, oh my God, I really am processing the whole universe from the inside out. The universe is simultaneously out there and in here. Because without all the neurons firing, all this bioelectricity putting together and being like, oh, this is there, it wouldn't necessarily be there. If I were knocked out, a blackout, nothing exists. It might still be here, but if I'm not here, if that energy, if that Christ, that light isn't flowing through me and everything else, I can't perceive that it is. This is those core audible sounds that Christella takes apart. These are all parts of the grand scheme of this sound that's just making up the universe right now, that might be the ringing in your ears. You can't. It's so prevalent. It's been there so long you don't even hear it anymore. The mind overrides it completely. But nonetheless, these sounds and more sounds too are being chanted, are being echoed in ways in which we can't even hear because it's just what is. There's a talk, or I've heard that in order to really become a Christ, you have to get back to the simple teachings of Jesus. There's a lot of Christian talk that's like, let's go back to the simple teachings of Jesus. But it seems to me that it's so convoluted now and there's so many details that there's really only the option to move forward to the simple teachings of Jesus. We understand that processes of time move from past to present to future. Not necessarily exactly true. As we're starting to understand, it moves differently than that. But still, for most of us, as I understand, it's still linear fashion. So we have to go forward. There is no going back. So what is forward? Well, you can allow what is forward to be manual. To be automatic. To give up saying, I have no control of this, I'm just poor little me. But you will have to some degree, make it manual. You'll have to make the choice of getting up and feeding yourself and clothing yourself and taking care of whatever your daily activities has to go on. You have to kind of do something. So what is it that we really want to do? Consider for a moment that if you are Christ, you're simultaneously admitting that I am me, this body, because without the perception that I am, then I can't really necessarily be. While at the same time, if I am light, and light is everything, and God is everything, you're also simultaneously saying, I am God. So we're both. You're two parts that have to make up a whole. An ego, an identity, and a spirit, the energy in which flows through it, the life force, the God force, all that is flowing through you. And quantum physics now is even starting to show that infinity splits off every single moment. So though we have a concept of past, of what happened, and the concept of future, what could happen, still everything happens in this eternal now moment, and it's always now. It's now, it's now, it's now, it's now. And now, our eyes or our perceptions tend to focus on what happens one thing at a time. But nonetheless, if you could really get down to it, you recognize that infinity is branching off every single moment. Infinity, infinity, infinity. And though it looks like I'm alive and animated, I and you are simultaneously going in and out of existence infinitely, every single moment. You are living, you are dying, you are being reborn, even as I speak right now. It just happens so quickly, like a movie reel. All the frames go by so quickly that you don't recognize that it's many, many parts, many, many pictures flowing together, creating a seamless experience that seems like one whole movie, your whole life. But it's changing constantly in little tiny bits. Being able to slow that process down or speed it up to the point where it starts to look like it goes slow again. Have you ever seen a wheel turning so fast that all of a sudden it starts to seem like it slows down and almost stops? Maybe even starts to look like it goes in reverse. Have you ever seen that, looking out the car window or something like that? Yeah. Things are relative to that. Now, I don't know exactly how to teach that yet, but we're starting off with this basics now. So, pretty significant, but at the same time, not. It just is. That's just a picture. I mean, the picture means a lot, but it doesn't necessarily have any, it can't come out and necessarily do something to you. It doesn't necessarily have very much profound impact on your life. Now, if we were all in some sort of crazy universe or something where pictures can come alive, maybe like Harry Potter, and this guy could actually come out of the picture at you, then maybe I would say, yeah, okay, this is more than just a picture. But ultimately, this is just an ego. Just like anybody else. Just like you. Just like Muhammad. Just like Krishna. Just like all the different ascended masters, all these people who seemingly have, on the surface level maybe, great differences. But what they have in similarity, what they have in common is they're just an ego. It's just a body. Without the same relative life force light that flows through all of them, they would just be dead corpses. As is this. This is Jesse, and as I understand, Jesse is the being in which was the father of, or like the lineage of Christ, of Jesus. Kind of his great-great-great-grandfather or something like that. And this is the only depiction I can find, really. I mean, there's a few, obviously, but I understand with Christian teachings is why are they always so depressed looking? Why are they always so sad? Because when I think of light, I think of fireworks, I think of stars, I think of exciting things, explosions even, maybe scarier than they are even inspiring. But ultimately, I don't understand why are they always so sad? The way in which my mind interprets it is they're sad because they have actually disconnected themselves from God. They've said, I'm not God. That's really sad. Maybe there was some sense of guilt. It seems to me, I just posted something on Facebook actually about a quote from Alan Watts that said that the Christian church indoctrinated guilt into their practice as a good thing. And I understand it relatively is good, but it doesn't feel good. So the only way to really move forward, to progress to feeling good, is to recognize the truth that is, no, actually, I am simultaneously God as well as other people are God as well as everything is God. Everything is Christ, everything is light. It's just slowed down or sped up or moved this way or that, bent around things in ways in which our minds don't yet understand, our science can't necessarily prove, but we can appreciate still that it is happening. When we cast a shadow, it's not actually darkness being cast. It's simply light is being moved in such a way that it dissipates and becomes less prevalent to our naked eye, than the light in which we're accustomed to seeing. So that's an idol. That's an idol. I'm an idol. I worship myself by feeding myself, by breathing, by drinking water, by interacting with you all, by taking care of myself, by aspiring and dreaming and having the courage or the will to take steps into that dream, even if I screw up, even if I'm not perfect. I understand that the practice makes me better. I will never necessarily be perfect, even if I get to a point of excellence, to the point where actually, what if I was able to achieve something like Jesus did? And actually be so incredibly epic, people of this world might say, wow, that is a perfect being right there. Well, what makes me a little bit scared, though I'm overcoming that fear quite rapidly, is that I don't want to be crucified. At least I don't want to be murdered for being my whole Christ self. And recognizing that's not really going to happen. Why? Well, if I shine a light in darkness, what happens to the darkness? It goes away effortlessly. Like the darkness, it's not even a competitor. It wasn't even there to begin with. It's that non-threatening. So what I seek, what I work for to discover within yourselves is that truth. Is recognizing there is no darkness, there is no evil, there is no wrong, never was. We had the powerful consciousness to make it up. And there were people out there who wanted to control us, who did not have faith in themselves, who did not have faith in the world, who did not have faith in God, but who had faith in wanting to manipulate the system so that they could have whatever experience they wanted to have with it, which is essentially creating a bunch of sheep out of human beings, and we're not sheep. We don't have to be wolves or shepherds either. We can recognize that those three things are parts of a whole, and there's much more parts and wholes beyond that too. Maybe you're a fox. Maybe you're a dragon. Maybe you're the grass. Maybe you're the sky. Maybe you are all of it. You are all of it. So I do think highly of myself, and I seek not to create an envy or an intimidation with myself. I seek to inspire, but if I can't inspire, I'm still going to go on being myself. And if that isn't agreeable to the other party, well, then I'm open to discussing it, but I won't back down. I won't take a step back, and I encourage you all to do the same too. And if you need backup, I'm saying that I'm here for you, and Christ is here for you. Jesus isn't coming back. Jesse's here. I'm here right now. You're here right now. This is as real as it's gotten so far. Maybe you could, but I would think that maybe you would have to get in quite the psychological state, and it probably wouldn't actually be as pleasant in that as you might think. Maybe not. I haven't had the experience of being in... So I've had experiences being in the cyclical patterns of the universe. I've been in the void, or absolute darkness, no light. I haven't yet experienced full divine light yet, which I have heard is a thing. Experiencing, understanding very clearly that there is a God and it is separate from you. there is another entity that is so powerful and high up in consciousness, it really is actually creating this whole universe. And it can talk to you. It can be separate from your own consciousness. But the way in which I led my life was without religion, was without even agnostic or atheist practices. I had me. I had this person right here, and understanding who he was and that he could be a cool, ethical guy without the need of necessarily having to follow rules and be told what to do and how to think. So I don't know what that is. I was born with it, very fortunate. I had a good hand, but recognizing too that even if we were dealt not very good hand or very challenging hand in this life, still we keep playing the game. You keep getting opportunities to play your hand, and if you've ever studied poker, it's not a gamble, it's a skill. You can, through practicing on whatever hand that you have and recognizing how people respond to whatever hands they have, you can influence the system. I won't say you should manipulate it. I'm not saying you should get one up on it because you are the system, but you can learn it so well. You can learn yourself so well, which is why I teach yoga, which is why I teach Qigong, to enable people to learn about themselves, that you can actually, like God, create the reality that you want to. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what shape that you're in. You are still just the same infinite energy you were as when you were first born, because it's always now. We're just transitioning in experience. And blessed be for that, because if we weren't able to, we would all just be stuck. Everything would just kind of be perfect and stagnant and still. But we didn't want that. We wanted diversity. We wanted experience. And so now I open up the potential to actually bringing in more than just Christianity into this church. Bringing all the religions into this church. Understanding the diversity and the beauty of the practices, as well as the things that are maybe not so good. But the way that I see it is that all conflicts, be them spiritual conflicts or political conflicts or friendly conflicts, just relationships in normal, are always divided by two things: good communication and poor communication. One way or another, every conflict begins with something poor, some poor communication. My God's better than your God. My God's truer than yours. My practice is more real than yours. Then through however much fighting, war, bloodshed that has to happen, inevitably, at the end, what resolves the conflict for good is good communication, understanding one another. The only way we actually do that, though, is open up our hearts and our minds to the potential of there is so much in this world still, and the world is still becoming, it is quite a small place, but it's still really big. If we really want to be the full Christ selves, human selves that we can be, I say that we take in all that this earth has to offer. And then someday when that finally does happen, and I will work my whole life to see that it does happen, know still that the challenges aren't over after that. Guarantee you, after we unify and actually maintain ourselves as a civil species who's at peace with itself, guarantee you that's when the aliens come. Hey, what's up, everybody? Didn't mean to throw a wrench in your perfectly flowing thing, but actually there's a lot of civilizations out there that are perfectly flowing. And maybe we'll be able to get along with them just right as rain at once. That'd be great. I think that would be cool. That would definitely jazz my inner child. But first things first, we have to work together. We have to see ourselves as parts of a whole. And like that simulation, or the animation of the pie, you could think about Christianity as one slice of the pie. And Islam is another slice of the pie, and Buddhism is another slice of the pie, and Hinduism and all the different religions are big parts of a greater whole. But then recognizing too, there's still plenty of ingredients. There's still the oven. You can make as many pies as you want. There's no limit to how many pies you can have, or different types or tastes or desserts in general. I want to take that expression, have your cake and eat it too, or you can't have your cake and eat it too, and throw that thing away. What's the point of having cake if you can't eat it? So give yourself an opportunity. I know that it's comfortable to try the same pie over and over again, but try something else. Just try it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to ever try it again. But maybe just have an experience outside of your comfort zone, into the darkness. See what's in the darkness, because I guarantee you're just going to find more light. Thank you. Namaste. Now I suppose we can all do an official meditation just to ground some of that. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty heightened stuff. Because in the relativity, you recognize that very complex can actually be very simple. So I've had people, Christians, already blame me that I have a God complex. And I tell them in return, actually, it's very simple. So, whatever you experience is exactly as you needed to experience, because you are light, and even in your imperfections, still, you are perfect. I just seem a little bit more perfect because I don't care anymore. But I do care. I really do. I really do. I just recognize that if I press on to thinking that to care is to try and manipulate, make people better, and reflect upon people that they're not just as they need to be right now, well, then I'm essentially cheating you out of what's your natural birthright, which is that you are perfect when you were born, you're perfect when you start to get older, and you're perfect when you're old and you die. That's the process. Because if it wasn't like that, what would it be like just to exist forever and ever? With my experience of being God in the void, consciousness housed in a void, which is our primal, base, fundamental reality, consciousness floating in a void just that experiences I am, it's extremely lonely. You're all powerful, but what's the point? So, let's be grateful for our imperfections. Let's be grateful for our diversity, and be grateful that we have so many parts. So many parts. I can't tell you enough the joy in which I feel knowing that all of you are out there, and none of you are me. But relatively, I know that you are. I know that you experience life in the exact same forms, you have the exact same emotions. Relatively, I'm sure we could break things apart and recognize we have the exact same experiences too, even in their diversity and their detail. And I look forward to having more experiences with you. So, coming to the front of our seat once again, if you like. We're going to allow this energy to move through. I can feel the energy building in my crown. Does anybody see my halo? It kind of makes me feel sore in my head. Placing the feet flat on the ground, hands on the knees or in the lap. Let out a sigh and relax the legs from hips to toes. The eyelids can close if you wish. As we inhale through the nose, gently pull the navel, your belly button, into your spine and up, creating some space in your lower torso and beginning to sit more upright. Keep that core nice and strong. This is our power center, our center of gravity. As you exhale again, just relax the legs. Inhale up with the chest, kind of push that heart forward, moving it out into the world. As you exhale out the mouth, bring the shoulders back, away from the ears, pull the shoulder blades in together, and relax the arms down to the fingertips. As before, inhale up with the crown, rise up as high as you can with the spine. Pause with full breath in. Exhale, shift the head back over the shoulders, relax.